We are live. There we go. Good morning. Oops. Friday, February 13th, 2026, here in House Transportation. And we starting up 15 minutes after the floor, more or less. And we have a return visitor. Andrea, welcome back to the committee. And wildlife crossings. I remember this was asked to be put on. I don't remember exactly who asked, but members asked, they generally receive. And thank you for coming in this morning. And we have a new witness that I'm not familiar with. So I don't know who wants to start and introduce themselves, and welcome. Happy Friday morning.
Thanks so much for having us. For the record, my name is Jens Hilke. I'm a conservation planner with Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department.
Yep, for the record, Andrea Wright, Environmental Policy Manager at the Agency of Transportation.
And this morning we're presenting together to give you a sense of our shared work over many, many years on wildlife road crossings between our two agencies. And what you see on screen is really my worst nightmare and really the starting place for our discussion. A foggy road, a large moose, and a vehicle moving very quickly. So we're interested in the safety of our animal populations and the safety of the traveling public. I'm sure you all are very familiar with the Agency of Transportation's mission, so forgive me, I didn't include it in the PowerPoint. But for those of you who are new to the Fish and Wildlife Department, we believe in the conservation of fish, wildlife, plants, and their habitats for the people of Vermont. That's a big mission. It takes us in a lot of different directions, and it has been helping us to focus on wildlife, the intersection, forgive the pun, of wildlife and roads. So I just wanted to begin with a little refresher, perhaps, on why this might be of interest to you all. And as I just said, safety is really a primary concern, both for our maintaining our wildlife populations and also for the traveling public. Perhaps you didn't know about the larger economic issues here. Nationally, wildlife vehicle collisions result in $8 billion in property damage every year. Clevenger et al. Estimates the cost to society for a single collision with a deer at about $7,000, about $30,000 per collision with moose. That not only includes the damage to the vehicle, the time off work, the compensation for the animal and the potential revenue to the department, and so forth. And then lastly, stewardship. We have an estimated 24 to 43,000 species in Vermont. It is significantly less expensive to handle those populations when they are common and not let them get rare. Things get much more expensive when we're dealing with crossings for rare species.
Yeah, and I just add to the stewardship, just, it's good for our tourism, our economy, the general health of our overall ecosystems, all things that we're concerned about. But really, when it comes down to our project level, common species are not regulated, and that is helpful to our projects, both from a cost and time perspective, and getting that through. And sort of just, why we care and sort of how we care. We're going to go through a lot of examples of the work that we've done together and how that sort of manifests in projects. But we have codified sort of a shared vision between our two agencies at the leadership level. And then at a project level, we're really building off of a lot of work, many years of work that Fish and Wildlife and the Agency of Natural Resources has done to pull into our projects really early in our project design process and be most effective for deciding when and where these wildlife crossings, where we can do this most effectively in our projects.
Representative.
Thanks for showing us this, Andrea. You made a comment there, common species that are not regulated. Is that what you said, or something similar to that?
Yeah.
Exactly what does that mean?
The biology.
A rare, threatened, or endangered species would be regulated perhaps by federal law or by state law. And so then there are requirements to the interaction between the Fish and Wildlife Department and the Agency of Transportation. So the bar gets raised in terms of how that situation is handled, generally more expensive.
Do we have any rare species that has required road crossing, additional action? I mean, I know even common ones, we're concerned about it, so I'm not
Yes,
doing
there are all
that.
manner of rare species that we're concerned about with regards to crossing. Even bats, for example, the endangered bats will dip down for the road and get hit by trucks. So there are numerous examples there. Okay.
Thanks.
On a landscape level, I just wanted to make sure we understand that we're not just talking about the road segments themselves. To maintain connectivity for wildlife populations, we really need to look at a larger pattern here. And so this is a picture of Route 7 in Brandon. And so we really want to begin with the largest forest blocks. That's where most species spend most of their time. And so you can think of those as core forests, the anchors of the network for the wildlife movement system. Then there's a set of forest blocks that are incredibly important because of their location. You can't get from the forest block at left to the one at right without using the one in the middle. And so it's a stepping stone block. And so as I deal a lot with Act 171, the Forest Integrity Bill requires towns to identify their forest blocks and connectors. And this would be an example of a connector, a smaller forest block that's integrally important because of its location on the landscape. And then there are micro connectors, and these are wildlife road crossings. So here specifically is where the wildlife movement network overlaps with the human transportation network. And so those pinch points are incredibly important. They're not the extent of the wildlife movement system. And then lastly, there's the entire stream network, and that's incredibly important for wildlife movement, particularly in the valleys where there's less forest. That riparian cover stream side vegetation really connects those forest blocks. And of course, where streams go under roads, we have bridges and culverts. And so there is opportunity for appropriately sizing our gray infrastructure to align with this green infrastructure to allow for this network of wildlife movement. We do have a conservation design in the state. It's been around since 2016. It's a science-based vision to sustain the state's valued natural areas, forests, waters, wildlife, and plants for future generations. It's a prioritization. It tells us what the most important places are for ecological function moving forward, and it spells out this network for wildlife movement across the state. It's these same places are also going to be important for a variety of other values, economic values, recreation, the working landscape, community values in terms of access to the woods and so forth. So there's a lot packed into this design beyond simply biological diversity, and connectivity, but is nonetheless integral to the design. The design can be broken up into its component parts. And interior forests are those largest forest blocks, those core forests that I described earlier. The connecting blocks, the connectivity blocks, include both those anchors, but also those stepping stones. So here's really where, at the landscape scale, you begin to see this network of where these connected forests are across the state. And then we add in the entire surface water network. There are multiple scales to the design, and at the species scale, we've identified wildlife road crossings across the state. This is based on the amount of forest cover on both sides of the road. So we're not just looking for where the forest blocks are close, but where there's actual good quality habitat on both sides of the road. And so these wildlife road crossings are incredibly important for understanding this larger network, where those pinch points are between the transportation network and the wildlife system. And in some cases, these are important for over-the-road movement. In other cases of wildlife, in other cases, they include transportation infrastructure where under-the-road movement might be more appropriate. So wildlife move for a variety of reasons. This is a bobcat. On average, male bobcats move about 19 miles per day. It's been quite a number of years since I've moved 19 miles a day and got up and done it again the next day. But that's what the male bobcats do every day. They move around a lot to have their daily needs met: food, water, shelter, access to mates. but food isn't evenly distributed across the landscape. So there are going to be different food sources in different places at different times of year. So they have a big home range to make use of these different food sources over the course of a year. And so that inherently means they cross a lot of roads. So species like this are something of the poster child for wildlife movement and the interaction with roads.
So my assumption with the 27 square miles, they have an area they kind of stay within.
The males do, yes.
And if there is a road there, and it's not like, a half a mile, we've got an overhead passage that you can use for hikes, right? So are they doing it by smell? Like, do they smell something that they know we have a bridge a half a mile away that they could use to get over to get to the, you see what I'm saying?
They're not necessarily going under the road, no. Most animals move at dawn and dusk where there's less traffic.
Right.
And so there's a tremendous amount of over-the-road movement. It very much depends on the species, their comfort level with going over or under. There's some species that are making perfect use of our existing culverts, species like mink. They don't mind going through a dark tunnel. They don't mind getting wet. And so they're doing quite well. There are other species like bear and moose who will only go through a very well-lit tunnel. And so are much more.
So that's what I mean, it's like if we build it, will they come type of thing, or
Yes.
use it?
Yes, but
That's
this,
my question.
yes, and over time, those species do use. I'll show you an example of
Okay.
deer using one of our underpass while the erosion control matting is still on there.
Okay.
So they find it.
Great, thank you.
Representative Wells?
How many bobcats are left in the state? I haven't seen one in about a year.
I can't give you an exact number of bobcats. The population is healthy and doing well. There are many, many bobcats in Vermont. They are thriving in places you might not even expect. Even in Shelburne, for example, there is a healthy bobcat population.
Give me a wild guess.
That's not my place, forget it. Animals also do bigger movements. This is a male black bear that moved about 140 kilometers. He was living near Bennington, and in response to a bad mast year, beech nuts and acorns, he up and went to Brattleboro and back. That journey did take him across multiple roads. This particular collared bear didn't cross Route 9. In the same study, we had a variety of animals who did cross Route 9. And so some of the movements we see are much bigger. We will also see, dispersing males. Like we saw Canada lynx in Rutland County, last year, who attracted a lot of attention, showed up on a lot of game cameras. That was a dispersing male looking for love and, forgive me, all the wrong places. He was heading south. The camera data indicates that he wised up and started heading back north. But those big dispersal events are also part of the wildlife situation. And so that's incredibly important from conservation biology perspective, because that is gene exchange between populations. And healthy populations have new gene flow coming in. And so that makes for more robust populations. If we have populations that are completely isolated, they live in islands in a sea of development, they will die out. When we have the next disturbance, they're much more likely to blink out. So that gene flow is incredibly important. My point here is this is on a scale that's altogether different than daily movements or even yearly movements, and yet so critically important for the health of our populations. This is a model from the Nature Conservancy that looks at the path of something like 2,300 species of mammals, birds, and amphibians, and their movement in response to climate change. The Nature Conservancy estimates that entire populations are moving north and south away from the equator on average 11 miles per decade, about a mile per year. That's entire populations, not just individual animals, and about 36 feet of slope. So please notice how the Northeast is a real pinch point for that movement on a continental scale. And so the connected forests that we enjoy in Vermont aren't just important for our animals to get across the road, but for entire populations to reorganize in response to climate change.
And I ask, like, are the different colors species? Oh, I
Yes,
see that.
mammals,
Amphibians.
mammals and
So
penguins.
a whole heck of a lot of amphibians. I
Yes.
think.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll talk about those in a few slides.
So just, yeah, bringing the transportation aspect into this. This is a typical project for us. We have a culvert there. You can see the old structure. And we have a choice when we have, it needs to be replaced. We can line it. Sometimes we line it, sometimes we replace with another culvert, or we're looking to replace it with a bridge. And we've been learning a lot in the last couple of decades about sizing our structures, especially in terms of climate change and resilience. We want to design towards bank full width. So if you see in the top picture there, you can see the stream normal flow is outside of the culvert boundaries. And that sort of dictates how big we want to go with the structure. And we've been working closely, especially after Tropical Storm Irene, with ANR's river scientists and biologists to size our structures so that they are not just based on hydrology and hydraulics, but also on passing sediment and debris is particularly important for resilience. But when we design to those standards, we're not just designing for resilience, it's an added benefit that we have better aquatic organism passage in our streams and also provide for terrestrial passage underneath structures like that. So this is another project that we have, a corridor along Route 12. We had 5 undersized structures in this area that were in need of replacement due to asset condition. 4 of them were identified as being in those high priority areas that Jens talked about. So we have all the information that they have put in over the years. We use that during our resource ID process. It's really early on in the scoping process. And at that point, we can identify that this is a critical area for particular species. We obviously knew it's in our repeat damages that we keep track of for resilience. So we knew that we needed to size up, and we knew that there's good habitat around there. There's specific species that we wanted to design certain aspects into our project. And by doing that really early in the project, it helps designers accommodate that early, really can speed along a project and make sure that we're designing for more than just hydraulics, but all the different things that we need to do in that area. So, yeah, I don't know that there's, I guess I would just say the only other part to mention about that with the whole benefits of resilience and passage for wildlife. This is a culvert that is also on a resilience improvement plan. So we identify it as a place that needs like a bunch of these areas, like I said, with the repeat damages. Many of the structures that are along this corridor needed to be increased for resilience, but also now allows for passage of all kinds of organisms and terrestrial animals as well.
We had a colored moose in Bloomfield that's up and headed to Facein and then headed back to Bloomfield and was within a few hundred meters of these structures. In that case, went over the road. But we're very optimistic that these structures will allow for under the road movement. Here's one of those structures, Bridge 84. And for those of you who commute Route 12, the traffic light's gone. And this beautiful structure is built. And so please look at right, you'll see that there's a wildlife shelf. And that's really typical of the type of work we're doing together.
Just a question on that last slide along Route 12. So, in the replacement of some of these culverts into bridges, did you put one in that was tall enough that a moose could cross through?
Yes.
And one or multiple or?
I at least believe 3 of them would support moose movement.
Okay. And are there cams or anything where you all can?
We monitored them beforehand, and as soon as the construction is done, we'll begin the post-construction monitoring. So we found exactly nothing moving through those culverts before construction.
Yeah.
This is your-
So another example is on Route 9.
Sorry, mind back up to that last one there. You said a wildlife shelf, that little, what, like 6 foot, or how
Yes.
long, how wide is that there?
Yes.
Can you tell from
Yeah.
here, like, got a little, to be able to walk under it?
Yes.
Yeah, how wide is that, like scale wise?
23 feet.
That's it, okay.
And that's really what we're looking for. We're thinking about a goat path, not a road. Most animals can move across the rocks. It's really deer and moose and in some cases, smaller animals or reptiles, amphibians in this case, that we're really particularly interested, worried about for wildlife movement. And so that goat path is really all we need. The wider we build them, the more likely we are to have people hanging out under there, and that will compromise the ability to move wild.
Thank you.
Another example from Route 9, a bridge constructed in 2004, where our two agencies worked very closely together to really oversize this structure to allow for wildlife movement. We did this really with black bear in mind, and we see a tremendous amount of bear movement. In the bottom right, you see a whole family. But we also had a dispersing Canada lynx. This is different than the one 2 years ago, but we had a Canada lynx making use of the same structure. So really exciting. These structures in Searsburg, farthest south we've ever seen one. And so, these structures are working for a variety of wildlife species. This was our first wildlife shelf under I-89 and Route 2 at Little River in Waterbury. It added about $20,000 to the cost of what became much more than an $8 million resurfacing project. And it has been tremendously successful. We've seen just about every species of mammal use this shelf. And so, as I alluded to earlier, at the bottom right is a deer using the shelf with the erosion control matting still fresh. So they really found it very quickly and are already utilizing.
Yeah, and so that example, and just to say, yeah, that was from a paving project that was nearby, and most of our projects have, well, not most have waste, but a lot of projects have waste from projects and they need a waste area to bring them to. So it was really a benefit to have that area right there where we could fill in the rocks and create that passage. So that was sort of a pilot, and now we have created a standard. We have always put what we call rubbings over stone fill, usually on the outside of the bridge where the stone is. The stone is there for scour protection, of course. And then we put rubbings to try to create an area where things will grow and have a riparian habitat. Usually, traditionally, underneath the bridge, we would leave the rock bare. And now that we know that we can have this benefit of filling in those spaces and having wildlife move, we've created a standard where in certain places where there's enough headroom that we will do that as a standard. Previously, we had been concerned that if we filled it in, vegetation would grow up and impact the substructure. But because of the way the bridge shades, we know that that doesn't happen. So really, it just provides a benefit to the wildlife movement without impacting our structures. And so it's a standard where it meets those kind of clearances conditions. And again, this is Route 15 in Walcott, and just that small shelf there is all that's needed to really facilitate that movement.
Yes, and just to make sure I'm understanding, so this Walcott example, you've got water flowing through it, so amphibians and so forth can come through on that. And then you're bringing rocks in from, like leftover from the project construction and using that to build that shelf?
Well, the leftover on the previous slide, so this whole area, that green area between the pier and what is the abutment, that was from this wasn't, the bridge project is not the project that we're talking about. There was a paving project next to it. And we identified this area as a need, and they needed to waste material. So they were able to just waste that material. We vegetated it, and it provides for the movement. All of our projects that have like a substructure near the water will have stone fill to protect that from scour, from the pulses of the water moving by it. And that's where, so that's just like a material that we bring in. It's not necessarily waste. It's just, okay. It could be type 4, which is big rocks, and type 3, which is a little smaller, depending on what that erosive force of the stream is. And so we always put grubbing on the outside, so not underneath the structure. And we're just finding that we can also do it underneath the structure and have that movement for.
And then that clearance, again, there's enough clearance so that a moose, something as tall as a moose can go under there on that goat path.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at the wool cut.
Yeah, even in walking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was gonna say, so is it typical now where you would just had the riprap there for wherever possible, you just add some soil and.
Yeah, I think it's,
Plantings.
if there's a 6-foot clearance from the
Okay.
rock to the bottom of the
Yeah.
substructure, then we'll.
Try to flatten it out a little bit and.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah.
I do have an eye on the clock. I'll just make the point that we're working in a variety of areas, and it's not just the transportation infrastructure. We need to work with land trust partners. We need to work with land use planning interests to really secure that larger area so that VTrans is not building the bridge to nowhere. We have to protect those investments in our assets by protecting the corridor, the larger corridor. And so additional investments, land use planning, land protection are needed. This is an example of effort in the Winooski River Valley, Bolton and Waterbury that we're very interested in terms of ensuring that permanently connected land goes all the way down to the highway, to the infrastructure. So I think we should just end with,
You do have a few more minutes. Just
thank you,
haven't heard the other person come in yet, and so we'll
thank you.
keep going till.
So we've been working very closely together for a long time. And the Highways and Habitats training is a great example where I believe it's been going on since 2004. It received a Federal Highways Environmental Excellence Award, and it's where we bring VTrans staff and folks from the agency out into the field to learn more, to handle these species, to learn more about the biology, and then in the afternoons to go visit the structures that move those animals. And so it's been tremendously effective. The types of conversations we're having with the agency now, where we have graduates of the program in middle and upper management, are fundamentally different than what we experienced 20, 30 years ago, where we were much more only involved in the regulatory process and not as we're working as well proactively together. So we also do have a road collection system where we are crowdsourcing wildlife vehicle collision or wildlife crossing information. We recommend that drivers don't do this when they're driving. It is set up so you can pull off to the side of the road and enter the data from a safe location. But this is tremendously important for us to learn more about roadkill. Where there's roadkill isn't the extent of what we're interested in. We're very invested in the approach that I outlined early in terms of structural connectivity. Where are there trees? Because where an animal crossed last week isn't necessarily going to indicate where that dispersing male will be headed, seeking a new to mate with a new population. So roadkill data is helpful. It's not the end all be all, but it's really important. And so we're really looking to maximize the crowdsourcing of this information. But here's really what the punchline that I really wanted to make sure we have time for is that the Fish and Wildlife Department and the Agency of Transportation have been working on a wildlife transportation action plan for about a year now. We have identified 1,285 structures that are ecologically important. Now, let me just qualify that. That is structures of every condition ranking. Some of those structures are absolutely fine, and we're not going to touch them. Some of those structures are in fair condition. It'll be a few years, maybe decades, before we have an opportunity to get to those. 67 of those structures are in poor condition. And that is our immediate opportunity for appropriately sizing, not only for flood resilience and other hydrologic issues, but for wildlife movement. So these structures overlap with the highest priority areas shown in the Vermont Conservation Design. These structures have good quality habitat on both sides of the road. So we're really thrilled to be working with the agency on, in a proactive manner on identifying these structures. So here-
So I think if you click it again, it just
Yes,
shows the
those are the
difference.
67, thank you. And I'll leave you with this sign from Richmond Elementary School. They got really excited about thinking about roadkill and made a variety of signs for us.
Other.
Oh.
10 second delay.
Great.
And this QR code.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for this. This is fascinating. You can see, you know, this could have, this will have big impacts to wow. And this is a question sort of outside of this, but is there a similar cooperative program between wildlife and VTrans on beaver habitat and what could be beaver, you know, issues with roadways and whatnot.
We certainly talk a lot about that in the Highways and Habitats training. We have staff assigned to beaver baffles. We work closely with the agency on those issues.
Last one.
Okay, thank you very much for this. So it's great to see the collaboration and the plan for bringing this collaboration into some of these replacements that you're identifying. What is the most significant wildlife crossing project that you see in our future? Like what would be the most important one to take on to serve the goals of allowing wildlife to cross in these important corridors? Is there one in particular, or?
We're in a very difficult financial situation, both at the state and federal level, and a lot of that money does come from the federal government. So I perfectly understand that that big expenditures here are tough. My top priority would be the Sharkyville Wildlife Crossing under I-89 at Waterbury. We secured $2.1 million to design it. It remains, the Agency of Transportation decided not to pursue construction funding. They would have had to pay match on that, and that's a significant cost right now. But when that structure, it's a small culvert, reaches the end of its service life, I would suggest that's a great opportunity to appropriately size it to allow for wildlife movement.
And do we have any information in your presentation on that particular project?
The Reconnecting the Greens effort, that includes Sharkyville, Pineo, and Little River.
Okay.
Representative Burke?
Yeah, I was just gonna say thank you. It's so interesting to think about transportation of the animals, the bears, and the intersections and and also the relationship between what you're doing and resilience, like widening culverts, and it's all part of the same. So thank you. It's very interesting.
Thank you, Representative Lally. Last one.
Yeah, just an idea, in this era of very scarce resources across our government. And in the interest of building awareness, the charming image at the end from the school children in Richmond. And as remembering how energized many years ago, you left our planning commission, Jens, when you came and spoke to us about all the bobcats that we have living in our midst in the middle of our village, using our riparian corridors, as I think you described it as a bobcat superhighway. How about promoting or making it somehow easy, I'm just thought for this committee, for communities to put up those sort of banners that you can see on utility poles and so forth that could indicate the wildlife that is living in their very midst. So that we start to change the culture and awareness around this in the same way that it sounds like the culture at VTrans has been changed over a couple of decades by just getting staff out to look at this and see the benefits. And, I think we have to we're keenly aware in this committee about how we have to prepare for a very different climate that is having many impacts. And we are trying to upgrade structures and shore up our infrastructure. And we have limited resources for that. And this could help make things a little more visible so that we can be thoughtful and intentional as a state about prioritizing some of these investments in between the disaster events when everybody is like, oh my gosh, we got to respond to this, but kind of helping people understand that things are changing and we need to be doing more. So I just wanted to put that out there as something for you guys to think about, and maybe working with your partners at AOT on how that could be something that could be easy to do in our communities.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both very much for coming in.
Yeah.
Great topic for Friday morning.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Representative Noyes is here for his bill introduction this morning. We're going to transition right up. And we're going to have 3 or 4 bill introductions. We won't be debating them, but we would ask clarifying questions and hear from the why and the piece, and we'll go from there. Welcome. And happy Friday morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me. For the record, Dan Noyes, represent Wolcott, Hyde Park, Johnson, and Belvedere. So, we think about how we're looking at land use planning in Vermont and really thinking about where people live. The population coming from the Human Services Committee, I often think about kind of the human services aspect of some of my work here, and looking at an aging population. I'm always thinking about, like, how do we have greater development for older Vermonters in our village centers and downtowns? And with that comes the fact that we have a lot of state highways coming through our village centers and downtowns. And I was reached out to by the Johnson Select Board, one of the members there, and she was talking about, hey, look, we're kind of expanding our downtown. We've got a village center designation, but there's still some areas around where we're starting to, we have our schools, we've moved our library. I don't know if anyone caught that on television. It was pretty cool. They jacked up the library out of the flood zone, moved it over closer to the school. And so we kind of like looking at this village centers and downtowns as more of an expanded area. And their concern was that not only being on 15, but adjacent roads to it, they wanted to think more about traffic calming measures and how they can slow people down. So speaking to a member of our regional planning commission, he was talking about the time between if someone's crossing a street, car going 35 miles an hour versus going 25 miles an hour, significantly decreases the amount of time people have to react. And so I think what this bill does is it's pretty straight, pretty basic in terms of be a lot of work to really flesh out more of the kind of how it could work legislatively or in statute, but just thinking about how we can give communities the ability to increase traffic calming measures as they see more development, whether it's age-specific housing or in this case, moving a school, because a lot of the communities I represent got Route 15 running right through them. These are major areas where people are trying to get to work. They're trying to get to Morrisville, or, if they're coming down from Eden or Lowell, they're coming through North Hyde Park. And there's been a lot of community input around how do we increase development in these downtowns and more central areas for our population, whether it's new homeowners or looking at, like I said, age-specific housing. So I put this bill out, just trying to address the concerns of our select board, and the work that they can do, and allowing them to have a little more ability to put in some traffic calming measures in their communities. So happy to answer any questions.
Representative Keeter.
So thank you very much, Representative Noyes. I grew up in the town of Proctor,
Okay.
and as far as I can remember, it has been 25 miles an hour. Why? I don't understand this, because there's been other motions towards trying to make village centers, but I lived in a town for 40 years and it had 25 miles an hour.
Yeah. I mean, so basically what they're saying is, if you posted at 25, are people, and we don't have, constant traffic patrol, are people going to be going 25? If it was, what does that look like? So, addressing their concerns, of allowing them some more ability to, slow people down was what they're trying to do. And I'm representing my
Understood.
Johnson Select Board here.
What I'm just trying to understand is
Yeah.
that there appears to be, and I don't understand it. There appears to be a 35 is the lowest you can go in a town. I don't get that because I grew up in one that was at 25,
Yes.
and you always, the Route 3 all the way through from north to south is 25 miles an hour.
Mhm.
So anyway,
And so help me with this, so the lowest they are allowed to do is 35? No, can they go to 25?
If you have a traffic study, something.
it's available to,
Okay,
that's what I'm
It
saying.
very depends on whether the town has control of the state highway, owns the
Mhm.
state highway or not. If in Heinsberg, we don't own the state highway, so therefore 30 they're not going to allow us to change it.
okay. So I mean, I think what this does is just allow communities to have a little more input in addressing speed limits and other traffic calming measures. I mean, I think as we really look to increase development in our village centers,
Well,
Yeah, this, currently, this is, something that is allowed under statute to set the speed limit sort of at will if you are a designated downtown. And we only have, we took testimony this week, there's very few of them, there's, maybe like 30, 35, I don't remember off the top of my head.
Mhm.
But it's a surprisingly low number, and we're gonna be getting, the good news is we're gonna be getting like 5 or 6 more coming online, yay. But that is so far, that is the only thing, and I don't know historically what are some of the reasons for this. I would love to find that out. But I do know that if you have downtown designation, it is you are also entitled to apply for funding to make the design changes to the context that would reinforce these safety features. So we seem to have a policy where we have tied the ability to have safe, productive,
Mhm.
pleasant, convenient conditions to the ability to pay for those. If you just want to have that, you aspire to have that, you think you ought to have that
Mhm.
because it's what most people think is common sense in the context of places where people live, especially older people. We're not yet allowed to do that. So I have a bill that is similar to yours that makes a similar policy proposal argument. For the same reasons, because of how we are rethinking housing and healthcare delivery and where seniors are going to live and all ages communities and productive communities too. So we have the opportunity to capture more grand list, which we desperately need.
Representative Noyes, the communities in their discussions in this grant, how much is enforcement involved in the community, and where do you see that in terms of this related to this issue?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Yeah, good question. I don't really have a good answer. I would, I'm happy to connect with the law enforcement, but I believe, obviously, I know that Johnson and Wolcott pay for added sheriff patrol. So yeah, there's definitely discussion with the sheriff on, speeding and what they're getting for their money. But this just might be another tool. Like, obviously, there's only so much resources a community can put into paying for traffic control in their village centers and downtowns. If there was other tools available, I know that when we were looking at a village center designation for Wolcott, one of the things that came up was just put a sign up that said entering the village of Wolcott. And actually that would slow people down. So,
No, it's missed that traffic calming things actually can work without the presence of
yeah.
enforcement, but I also know that we've taken pretty significant testimony on the lack of interaction between enforcement and infractions.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm sure if you go, even here in Montpelier, we've all walked on the streets and seen people moving right along, getting to where they need to go. So
We've also heard something, I don't see our next bill presenter here yet, so I don't mind going a little bit. We're not quite at that time yet. There's been some places that have tried speed limits at different times of the day. In other words,
Okay.
you have a heavy commute morning,
yeah,
and the speed limit is 35 through the town. And through the rest of the day and the shopping time period, that the speed limit may drop, and then at commute time in the afternoon, it may go back up. Ever heard anything like that?
without really visible signage, I think that could be confusing to people in the community. Like, okay, is it 25 today or is it 30? What time of day is it? So you'd really need to invest in some signage so that people understand what the current speed limit
Kind of crazy, huh?
is. Sometimes, yeah,
Like a school speed limit.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Representative Burke and then Representative McCoy.
I think you had a good difference for me. So I know we pass weekly. On one side, there's a school, but so you reduce speed on 100 or 107, it's a state road. Right?
They do.
But they have a flashing
Yeah.
light that oh, okay, I need to slow
Yep.
down to 25 now because school is in its bit of time before and after school.
Yeah. And we see that at Lamoille Union, right on Route 15 in Hyde Park. So,
Those are good too.
yeah.
Well, I think Representative Burke was next and then, right, and then over to you.
Yeah, I just want to say, for a long time, have been in favor of giving communities the opportunity to lower speed limits below 25. Within the sort of designated village center or whatever, just, we've so often prioritized the vehicular movement as the priority and to share the road and respect what's there. I think it's a matter of getting people to slow down to respect what's there and what instead of just passing through. At the same time as keeping the traffic flowing, maybe a little bit of few minutes of slowing down is not going to impact somebody's commute that much. I'm in favor of that.
Yeah, and we often, a couple of my communities don't have sidewalks where their their village centers are. Johnson does, but go up to Wolcott, there's no sidewalks, or North Hyde Park. So,
The car slowing down, then it makes it safer for everybody. The driver too. Maybe.
I would say what you bring up, has been discussed a lot in this committee, and there's a lot of support from, you mentioned the Regional Planning Commission. We just had presentations from all regional planning commissions, a number of them, majority of them, I think. And they all said sort of traffic calming, entering villages in town centers, is what people want and is critical. And even with the speed limit change, I could argue each of these coming into town, if it did have a flashing sign that told you what your speed was and whether, because you see some of those, I think in Bristol where they own that part, they've put up those signs. And, if you're speeding, it flashes and lets you know that you're speeding. Not that it's going to stop everybody, but I would say the majority of the people tend to respect that type of instruction.
Representative Casey?
So right now, what's the speed? What's the speed? It's
I think it's 35.
and so you want to lower it down.
Well, I
to what?
think it's more about allowing communities to really look at traffic patterns, and where they're seeing development or, like moving the library, right? So like, I think it's more about making it easier for municipalities to kind of make these decisions, especially, around infrastructure that would have more foot traffic or more people, more parking. So I think that's really where the select board wants to go with this, to just give them a little more ability to make these decisions.
I guess I kind of worry about, commerce a little bit, slowing them up. Them guys got
Yeah,
a job to do.
no doubt.
So I just, so
Yeah.
you're
And
looking for 10 miles an hour, or are you looking for?
I'm not
the option of
looking
going
for
more?
any mileage. I'm just saying, what could it be? And that would be, this committee would, kind of flesh out more of the details I would recommend. I'm mainly thinking about representing my community that has reached out to me and saying, hey, look, we could use a little more ability to look at traffic calming in our village centers and downtowns. And that's all.
So does this bill have a limit of how low you go? So you can go down to 5 miles an hour.
Pretty short, Bill. No,
That
would a
they
community
want.
set 5 miles an hour? Yeah, they,
On that
but
bill, they could.
I don't necessarily think that, that would be. I don't think that would
It doesn't
work.
sound practical. I agree. But I'm just saying, it sounds like
Yeah,
it's kind of vague in it when you
Sure.
could. So I just,
What?
Yeah, Representative Noyes, thank you for this. It just echoing Representative Couch, what you are looking for has been repeated by many regional planning commissions who have come in the last couple of days. I think almost all that have said their towns want this. And I would say that 3 of the 5 towns I represent are all looking for the same thing, ability to lower the speed limit and to put in traffic calming measures, whether those are speed bumps or whatever. So I'm in support of this, and I'd love to see our committee look into it further.
and I definitely would leave it up to you all to work out the details. 5 miles an hour is not. I don't think that's helpful on Route 15 in a village center. But, it's 25 by a school that's like right on the side road. I don't exactly know how the statute works and what is allowable in the communities, but as I said, this is a community reaching out to me to sit in this chair and make their pitch to this committee that can really think about this work. Just as it was something around human services, it would be down in my committee. So.
Okay. Anybody else? Representative Lau, we're
I just wanted,
waiting on our next one, so we get a few extra minutes on this.
I just wanted
We'll
to
switch and start into it.
follow up with what Rep. White said about the RTCs, and they offer a lot of expertise to communities to help put them on the path towards this, including offering the speed studies, which is sort of one of the first thresholds that has to be crossed with this. But then oftentimes the finding will be, well, the desired speed limit does not match the design conditions of the road. Well, what do you do? What are some of the potential opportunities? How do you achieve that level of sort of friction on the segment of the roadway that you would like to control the speed? The traffic calming measures that Rep. White was mentioning. So just putting that out there that RPCs, this is bread and butter. They do this all the time. They are very good at it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful weekend.
And
Don't forget tomorrow's Valentine's Day. Oh, sorry.
Pardon me?
I said, have a wonderful weekend and don't forget tomorrow's Valentine's Day.
yes, good idea. I didn't talk about inspection stickers. I made it through. Almost right to the end. Cheers. Thank you all for your work.
Thank you. Have a great day. Representative Noyes? Good morning, Representative Chino.
Morning.
We are having bill introduction of yours.
This is the short form one, right? It should be quick.
51. Up on our wall there with a pink dot, which means it came this year and not last year.
It definitely came. It came like a week ago or something, probably.
And this is the intro.
Yeah. So pulling it up, it should only take a minute because it's short. So I'll explain what the concept is behind the short form bill. So it has a very long name for a short form bill. Yeah, I know it's loading. It's like taking 100 years to, oh, here you go. No, it's on my phone now. Thank you though. So it's called an act relating to establishing pilot programs related to highway services for electric vehicles, stabilizing and supporting public transit, and establishing a Vermont rideshare service. What do I mean by this? So what I'm hoping is that when you take up the T-bill, because I know that that's how this committee generally works, like a lot of your action is through that one bill. So that's why it's a short form. So maybe this concept will inform the T-bill. That you would consider some kind of pilot program. And I believe there may be other bills out there floating around right now with pieces of these things in them too. So I just want to acknowledge that. Create a pilot program within the AOT that would provide incentives for existing gas stations to install electric vehicle supply equipment, together with the expansion or addition of facilities and services at the stations that promote the social drivers of health for individuals traveling in electric vehicles. I would say traveling in general, because it doesn't have to be just for the electric vehicles, actually. So the idea is that our modern gas stations, especially in a place like Vermont, tend to be more than a gas station. There's still those little gas stations that you just stop at and there's like a little booth or something. But generally you go inside and there's a convenience store and like a Dunkin' Donuts or something, and like a little seating area and bathrooms. And some places there's truck stops where people can take showers and stuff. And I've noticed in various parts of the state, not just in Chittenden County, but in other areas, that they become hangouts sometimes. Like, the elders will hang out at the table, drinking their coffee and talking and stuff. And so it's expanding on that concept that our fuel facilities could be incentivized in some way to not just provide petrochemicals, but electricity for electric vehicles. And then if people are going to be waiting, even if it's 20 minutes for an electric vehicle to charge, I don't know the average charge times for the record. I don't have one. So, but I don't think it's less than 20 minutes usually, that they could be taking care of themselves and be part and build community so that people could be hanging out at gas stations or whatever we call them, service areas, maybe that's a better way to call them. So that really is the idea of that, just to incentivize expanding the fuel that's available for sale, but then also encouraging them to think bigger about the services they're providing the community. And these could be things they sell. So I'm not saying that we would be asking business owners to give things away free. It's just more like to offer more options to people to receive services at their service areas. Or maybe the state working with them to provide some stuff at the service areas, kind of how we give out free coffee at the travel stops and stuff. Yeah.
What do you mean by services? What are you talking about? What's your definition of services?
At the very minimum, it would be petrochemicals. It would be electric charging stations, perhaps food and restroom facilities, but perhaps some people decide to open inns at their gas stations, like that, like it used to be when you traveled by stagecoach, so people could stay overnight while their car charges. Or perhaps it could be that they have entertainment, that they have nightclubs or day clubs or, a yoga studio or a sauna, or I don't know. I would encourage people to think big, like what could you add to your business model to help you bring in additional revenue and diversify your income while providing a positive contribution to the community.
Well, in the beginning of your statement there, it sounds like you're describing a convenience store.
It's like, it's like the next generation of a convenience store.
Where have you seen this before?
I haven't. I'm proposing pilot programs to experiment and explore it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I've
I
seen
challenge you to
similar.
open one.
Okay.
Yeah, I have 4 other jobs right now.
You got room for one more.
If any existing owner wants to work with me as a consultant, I'd be happy. But the idea here is maybe the state creates grants or some way to promote this. At the very least, it's just adding electric charging to where gas is being charged. That's really the minimum I'm asking. The next thing would be a pilot program to stabilize and expand public transit systems. We see that our public transit systems are in peril. At least it seems like that to me. Like they are underutilized. And so then what happens is they cut services, which make them less appealing, and it's a downward spiral. And we really need, and it does affect more people than we may hear in this building, because number one, a lot of the people couldn't get here because they're taking public transit to begin with. Number two, they don't have access to a lot of resources to people using a lot of people, not all, but a lot that use public transit. So like they're not able to advocate for what it means to them. But there are some people who like their whole life revolves around like one bus that they have to take to get somewhere on time, to get to work, to get to their appointments, to get their things done in a day. And if they miss the bus, they're homeless for the night. And we saw in Burlington over the summer, in the winter, not so much, over the summer, people being homeless overnight because they missed the last bus because something goes wrong. And they have nowhere to, they don't have money for a hotel. So they're sleeping outside all night or at the bus station waiting for the morning bus. So, or when I got back from a trip on a Sunday night, I had no clue service had been cut. And all the Ubers were like $100. So I walked halfway home from the airport till I got to the urgent care, at which point the prices plummeted to $7. And then I took an Uber home. So that's a little trick for anyone. Take the Uber from the urgent care, they price them lower. But yeah, well, I'm laughing because it's ridiculous. Yeah. It's good that they priced them lower from medical facilities, but it's sad that it was that on a Sunday night, at a reasonable hour, I couldn't take the bus home from the airport. So that
$93 for your life.
or something like that. Oh, for the luggage, I had a carry-on. I got the ticket with the carry-on. So that being said, what this section proposes is that we support the creation of incentives for individuals to use the existing lines, to create opportunities to make, like, including opportunities to win prizes or earn discounts at local businesses. So I'm just trying to think creatively about how do we make it fun to ride public transit in a way that doesn't just support the transit system, but supports businesses along transit corridors. And like, I'm not asking the business owners to give things away. This might be more like the state says, the pilot program is investing a little bit of money in some game you can play by taking the public transit system. It's just an example of like how it might look. And then giving these stores like money to buy gift certificates. So we're supporting the local businesses along the transit corridor and then encouraging people to use the transit corridor to visit those businesses. So this program could also support, so this gets a little futuristic, but there are some examples in the world, support public transit agencies' examination of the use of autonomous vehicles. I was waiting for the ominous music to play in the background. To supplement or expand existing services, including by providing more frequent service, extended service hours, or connections between existing routes. So what I'm imagining here is like, imagine if like there was, as autonomous vehicles become more feasible, because I know on some roads they're not right now, but on some they are, that maybe our transit agencies, I don't know if that's what you call them, but like, the agent, our public transit agencies, they're given some funding to purchase fleets of autonomous vehicles. And a fleet, I don't mean like hundreds, maybe it's like 3 in one area and 5 in another. But like, imagine if a person could, like, I'm trying to think where I was traveling. It might've been Colorado, where it said, if you need a ride, call. And I was like, what? And they had like a system where like, if you're at a bus stop, you can call this number and like someone comes and gets you, instead of a bus that's running along that route constantly, and it saves money. So like, imagine if you could somehow, like, I know with Green Mountain or GMT, it's like Green Mountain Transit, the Chittenden County one, there's an app you use now, which I won't get into because it frustrates me, but like the app can be used to pay for the ride. What if the app also had a feature where you're like, I need to get from this line to this line, And it takes like 2 hours to do that with the bus, but you could call some autonomous vehicle to get you there in 5 minutes, like some kind of way to use autonomous vehicles to fill in the gaps or to provide service after hours. Like imagine if 24/7 in Vermont, you could call an autonomous vehicle through the state. So it's like a AI Uber that's publicly owned or something. So I don't know. It's far-fetched right now, but the first step would be giving the transit agencies some funding to explore using autonomous vehicles to fill in the blanks in their service. Then the last piece would be it's similar to this, creating a pilot project within the AOT to establish a state-operated rideshare service that could provide, it says would provide on-demand transportation to individuals, and the revenues could be used to support the existing public transit agencies. So what I was imagining is imagine like if AOT contracted with someone or did it themselves, however they choose, whatever is more cost-effective, to have an Uber system, like a state rideshare service. So Vermonters could sign up to be riders, and in their free time, or it could be their job, they could offer to work for the AOT or whoever the contractor is. And then instead of this big international company paying the driver like $3 and taking $17 or whatever they do sometimes, and maybe it's not always that bad, but I've talked to some drivers and it's bad. Like sometimes they get a very small amount of the fee, like the $50 you pay, they're getting 10. The state could pay the drivers more fairly, and then the profits could go into funding public transportation. So the idea is like people who don't want to take public transportation or it's not available could call the public rideshare service, which would employ Vermonters and pay them well, and then put the profits into the state's public transit system. So it's a way to kind of keep the money local, and instead of extracting wealth from the labor of Vermonters, the Vermonters will get their labor compensated at a better rate, and the profits would support the people. That's the concept behind it. I tried to not be too wordy, but I think you get the drift.
I wonder how that would work out in like the rural areas. Like we heard of a community yesterday, Somerset has 3 people in it. So I'm assuming they have a car.
Yeah, I think in an area like that, it would be hard to make it work. But like, what if someone wants to get to that community from Burlington? How do they get there right now? It's probably really hard without renting a car, but perhaps with a state rideshare service, someone who lives in somewhere between Somerset and Burlington, because I don't know where Somerset is. Yeah, maybe they see this ride. They're like, you know what? This person's I'm gonna get paid $100 or whatever to drive and pick this person up in Burlington and bring them there. That's worth it for me. You know, like you can order it. It can go up on a board, and like people could be reviewing this regularly. And I mean, I would even consider if you got paid well enough, giving someone a ride. I live in Burlington, out to the country, and then I drive home. So I mean, how I could see helping an area like that, and maybe not for the residents, but for visitors, for their family who comes from out of state or whatever.
Most people in Burlington don't have vehicles. I come from a rural area. I don't hang out on Burlington.
I think most have them. This isn't just about Burlington. This is about residents and visitors alike. You know, it's just about ways of increasing access to transportation in creative ways that invest in the local economy and not let our transportation needs be a source of extraction for these big companies like Uber and Lyft. I see a hand. I'm not in charge.
Yeah, Brian, I really appreciate how you're thinking creatively about problems. It's really
Thanks.
nice to see. Do you know about Go Vermont?
No,
It's a state ride sharing.
it's a what?
It's a state, it's a V-Trans, sort of ride sharing. We've got about, there are trip planners, there's ride sharing, there's, the carpool matchups, there are a bunch of things like that. So if you wanted to get somewhere, it might tell you, I went on it once to see about getting by train, it was going to take 24 hours, but you had to go. But it will give you there are some resources, and they'll support like the band pools for people who are going to the same place of work. They would have a van for a group of people and set up so that one person was the the main driver, and anyway, just something to explore.
Well, it's something good to know about too, to refer people to,
Yeah.
if they're having issues
Yeah.
with transportation.
Yeah, it's not solving all problems, but it's there, which has been there for a long time.
Will be the last one, I think. Go ahead, Representative Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Chia. So, yeah, really appreciate your creative ideas. And on the, pilot program for highway services for electric vehicles, we had some testimony earlier this week and actually learned about, I believe it was 2, locations that are currently open in Vermont, one in Richmond, I want to say. And I can't remember if it's in Maple Fields or a different brand, but it is a traditional convenience store with traditional gas pumps, and they have just invested in level 3 chargers
Great.
for the public. Because I absolutely agree, we need more like that, and I think it's a great business model for these gas stations moving into the next century and also expanding our network. But I like the idea of, incentivizing that in some way. There are some state programs that are working on establishing more level 2 and level 3 chargers, but I don't think there's anything working directly, with the private industry.
Yeah, I really see it as a way to help existing business owners through this transition in energy that we're going to be going through for like a generation. It's not going to be quick. It's like, instead of putting them out of business, let's help them stay in business.
Exactly.
Thank you very much for.
Yeah, thanks for giving me time.
Thanks. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Thank you. Do I understand that Representative Burke is going to lead?
Yep, and we'll do this really fast.
Well, we may, for those who can, we may feed into lunch time frame a little
Yeah.
bit. We'll see how we pick it up from there. So let's get started. This is not a short one. So let's get.
863 is what we've done for a few years, put some proposals that are not likely to show up in the T-bill for consideration to incorporate into the T-bill. So it's putting out a bunch of ideas in different areas that, may be able to receive consideration, testimony, and acceptance or not. It's basically 863 is related to transportation initiatives to improve equity in infrastructure, increase resiliency, and reduce emissions. So in the introduction to the bill, I don't know whether I should read through it, but it's a lot. It includes a fee on retail deliveries, permit municipalities to adopt a local option tax on sales of gasoline and diesel. We've talked about this. Appropriate funds to various transportation programs, amend the primary purposes for which transportation alternatives program grants will be issued. We have talked about that. Require electric vehicle supply equipment that is available to the public to use credit cards. Require that electric vehicle charging available for public use for real-time status information. Establish laws to permit property owners to install electric vehicles. I don't know if I should keep going on this. Establish an income tax credit for the purpose of certain electric vehicles. People will talk through these different things. It just gives you the idea that there's a lot of sort of things that are sort of some random and some not to put in here. So in section 1, retail delivery fee. So we have had a number of talk. I've said this before in committee several times. We've had a number of transportation studies over the years, and they've been done by other entities too, like NCEL. That one, if we are having a revenue shortage, how do we deal with it? We've had transportation funding studies that we've paid for that have recommended certain ways to close the gap. And I just feel like we at least need to talk about them. And that's why this retail delivery fee, although I'm finding that it's getting me on a very negative, bunch of us who signed on to this very negative list that's circulating amongst certain elements of the state. But anyway, that's just what it is. I'm not going to go into detail. It's written out here. And I think it's something we should at least consider. And that's in section 1. And section 2 is also just what the deposit, how we're going to use the fees. And section 3 is the local option taxes, which is the exact language for H766, which I sponsored at the request of my select board to see how we could get some money into the town offers. And that is being discussed right now, and we're finding that it's not really going to be feasible to tax the gasoline because the distributor doesn't differentiate where the gas is being delivered. But we are discussing the possibility of maybe adding on to a local option meals and rooms tax. So I would like to, at some point, get some testimony on that to see whether that's an option. So I can sort of bring that to my community. Then we go to section 4, and Representative Tomlinson is going to talk about section 4, 5, and 6.
It's on page 11.
11.
It's section 4.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if you're following along on the bill as introduced,
Yes.
we're section 4, page
Yeah,
11.
sorry, I didn't.
It's okay. Yeah, so section 4 relates to appropriations, and generally the goal of this section is to maintain level funding for various aspects of our public transit program and other active transportation programs. So you'll see it supports level funding for both our rural and urban transit providers. It also proposes effectively level funding for better connections, for mobility and transportation innovations, MTI grants, bike ped facilities, and the Downtown Transportation Fund. Particularly want to highlight the appropriation proposed for Drive Electric Vermont, as I don't think that that's included in the budget currently. And so that's something that we'd like to hear more testimony on and understand better the value that Drive Electric Vermont provides in supporting access to EVs for Vermonters who wish to have access to more affordable and clean options for transportation. So that's the section 4. Section 5, which is on page 13, is related specifically to the Transportation Alternatives Grant Program, also known as TAP. So this is a federal funding related to transportation alternatives. We heard already some testimony about this grant program. Previously, I think it had been more of an 80-20, or it was mostly, it's intended for transportation alternatives. In 2024, a change was made such that it was allocated 50-50 to transportation related programs and then environmental mitigation programs related to clean water. At this point, as we all know, our transportation fund is in a difficult position, and that's really challenging many important transportation funding priorities. At the same time, there's alternative pots of funding for environmental mitigation projects. And so this proposes shifting the balance of funding from 50-50 to 80-20 and prioritizing transportation related programs, specifically bike ped infrastructure and the Safe Routes to School program, which has been ongoing, though it doesn't have state support right now, but has been only available for safe routes to schools in Chittenden County because CCRPC is funding it. So this would allow more sort of statewide support for those programs in a more resource-strapped moment. So that's something we heard a bit about already, and we could get more testimony to understand different perspectives on that, shifting that balance of that grant. That's section 5. And I think section 6
I do the next four.
6 to 10.
Yeah, I'll do section 6 through 10, which is primarily around electric charging. I'll introduce myself. I'm Phil. I enjoy donuts in the morning. Yeah. Anyways,
Let's
you know, what's that?
Others not.
Yeah, right.
Bingo card.
That's right. It's on my bingo card. It clearly we've had some testimony already, and from my realization, and hope the rest of this committee has seen that there's a mix of laws and rules and whatnot around electric charging. And I think, these next sections will talk about pieces of it, but overall, we really need to understand, what is a public charger and what's required if it's a charging for public use. And then we have chargers put in by maybe ACCD in condo associations or homeowner associations, and what are the requirements around there? And then third are the private ones. So, part of this is saying, hey, if it's a public charger, you need to, you shouldn't require that you have to have their app, and that's the only way to pay for it, just like going to a gas station, you need to have opportunities. And we didn't think that it was in our law, but there are some laws deep in our laws that sort of doesn't specifically say charge card, but it does say alternative methods, not just one method. It can't become a club and you have to be a member of the club to use the charger. That's part of the first little section. Then there's a part in there which is called right to charge, and I don't want to mess it up by, saying what we're trying to do here is force landlords to allow chargers, but we need to define how condo associations put in chargers and what the rules are around them, and how a landlord could put in a charger and how they would deal with it with their renters, whether they charge for it or it's part of their rental. So all of that all needs clarification so we can expand the charging infrastructure. Let me just see. And in section 10, as we go on, it's all about HOAs and condos and how they go about doing it. So I'm saying what we really need to do with these sections is just trying to define what the rules are around charging infrastructure.
And I'm taking section 11, appropriations for vehicle incentive programs. Section A allocates $3 million to Live Smart. That was just sort of put in there as a placeholder. I know that there's not that money, and I don't believe that the Capstone Community Action that administered that program so wonderfully really has the capacity right now to do that. I think that, which is really sad, because it was providing affordable transportation options for very low income people. So at some point, I just want to keep that idea alive, and just wanted to put it in there. In B, $70,000 is appropriated to the purpose of funding the e-bike incentive program. We've had that e-bike incentive program. It has, I believe, run out of money. Probably Andrea knows that. But that was sort of a pet project of mine to keep that funding going. And I think that it does give options, affordable transportation options for people who'd like to get rid of one car and for a family, like perhaps to scale down a little bit and cut their transportation costs, which is really what, one of the things we're trying to do. So that's all that's there in section 11 on page 25. That's the extent of it. So I would just say, I'm not really advocating for the 3 million for the Live Smart, but I am advocating for the 75. And now we get to section 12 and 13.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to the witness chair since I'm not on the camera, if that's okay for our many viewers.
Just, and you lean back, and you're right there in the corner. You guys, please do. Go ahead and move if you want to. It's totally your choice.
Let's do it.
Time to get up.
Put the spotlight on.
Okay, all right, here we go.
Turn the camera.
Candace White, for the record, thank you for having us. Just to make sure, so we're discussing Bill H-63, which is on the committee page under Damian Leonard for today, in case anybody was having trouble following. So I have 4 brief parts to this bill. The first one is regarding electric vehicle tax credits. So we have heard that car purchases for used cars and new cars are down, and we understand that incentives have definitely had an impact on car sales in the state of Vermont. And we know that funding has dried up. And so this proposal includes basically a non-refundable tax credit for the purchase of new and used electric vehicles. So proposing a $5,000 tax credit for every new electric vehicle sold at retail and a $2,500 tax credit for a used electric vehicle sold. And that would be, so we're not asking for an appropriation, although it would affect the taxes coming into the state. So probably would have to be looked at by Ways and Means. But just the real idea is to somehow restart these incentives so that we can continue to make progress on our climate goals. The second part that I want to share is so basically we've talked a lot about public transit and that public transit is suffering for revenue. And we know that we are in the midst of education reform, and that is being discussed in other committees. And so this is really asking that public transit systems and school districts meet at least once every 2 years to explore opportunities for efficiencies. So, and the idea is, I see in my district, we have half-empty school buses driving around. We also have half-empty public transit buses driving around. Both are very costly. And so, and we actually saw a testimony a couple of weeks ago where public transit is meeting with healthcare facilities and hospitals to look for efficiencies and make sure that public transit is serving those populations. So again, this is it's not asking for an appropriation. It's just asking for public transit systems to sit down with school transit to look for potential efficiencies, for cost savings, for increased user, ridership. And we have discussed this a little bit with the agency, and there has been, some suggestions like maybe to narrow the scope a little bit by looking at just high schools, not all schools. I really think that's the reasonable way to start, is with the high school students. They also mentioned perhaps a pilot program versus just asking for this statewide. Although we do know that certain areas of the state are already doing this, Chittenden County, and I think down south.
Just a comment, I'm a board member on Tri-Valley Transit, and they do this now. They look for opportunities to combine with schools. And in fact, there are a couple routes that, students get on Tri-Valley Transit to get to school rather than run a school bus through there. So that while it's not available everywhere for obvious reasons, there are opportunities there, and they can strengthen both public transit and reduce the cost to schools.
Exactly. Thank you. And
So I just got a bit lost here. So sections 12 through 15 are related to the EV tax credit. And now we're on section 16.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Transportation.
So we are education transportation is section 16.
Okay,
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. And in response to Representative Couch, TBT is coming into my district and replacing Green Mountain Transit, and that transition should be complete this summer. And so I'm feeling like in our district, we have a great opportunity to get this new entity coming into our area and to sit down with our schools. And we also saw when we had the youth climate lobby in last year, we had some students in committee who expressed a lot of interest in this type of collaboration. So I'd love to, I'd love to see this move. Moving on to section 17, pollinator habitat. This is just asking the Agency of Transportation to create and maintain pollinator habitats within state highway rights of way in locations selected in consultation with the Agency of Natural Resources. And, the idea here is we know that labor in the Agency of Transportation is very costly. And so mowing is one of the many things that the maintenance crew in the agency does. And so looking at our highways, also thinking about the beautification of the highways. I think about this as kind of like the marketing of our state. We know we are, visitation is really important to our economy. And so when people are driving on our highways and seeing, pollinator shrubs and plants and so forth, that could be beautifying our highways instead of just having green grass that has to be mowed regularly. It also, so pollinator habitat obviously supports pollinators, and we've seen an incredible decline in that habitat in recent years. And we also heard testimony recently from the agency where they were planning for a $150,000 grant from the federal government. I think they had 8 to 12 pollinator habitat locations chosen, ready to go. The landscape architect was ready, and that money was pulled back. But we know that the agency's already put a lot of planning and effort into this. And so, you know, it's $150,000. It's not a lot of money, but I feel like it would make significant impact on our natural resources, on the beauty of the state, marketing the state. Yes.
Shouldn't we move them? We already said this before, but shouldn't we move them away from the road a little bit so our grills aren't getting loaded with pollinators?
Well, I mean, they are flying. So I'm no
I'm sure
expert.
they're getting whacked with vehicles. I'm sure of it. I just find it hard to believe they're not. But I'm just saying it. I just hate to see waste money.
Yeah.
For good intention, and they're getting whacked with vehicles. So, you know, vehicles are flipping back and forth at 65, 70 miles an hour. I don't think a bug stands much of a chance unless it had little helmets for them or something.
When you've got the, you know, you've got the medians and then you've got the sides of the highways too.
And clarification.
Yeah.
State.
I'm not an expert in a good point, but I think we're seeing a lot, many fewer bugs on our windshields than we were when we were children. And that's indicative of kind of the environmental crisis that we're in. Okay, my last point, section 18 on page 32, municipal salt applicators. So this is asking the Agency of Transportation to work with the Secretary of Natural Resources and make changes to the Vermont Local Roads curriculum to create training for best management practices for the spreading of salt on roads, parking lots, and sidewalks. And I think we've had some conversation about salt use, and I think the agency is feeling like they've made some good changes in their policy regarding spreading salt. We know how expensive salt is. We know about the shortage of salt, and we also know what's the damage that salt can do when it gets into our waterways. So, you know, making sure that we are following best practices and that we are sharing those best practices with municipalities and with private entities so that we are using the least amount of salt we need to while still maintaining safe roads and, you know, considering the biology in the state. And that's all I've got.
Okay, I'm gonna.
I think we have.
Well, we have a little bit more to do, but we have a clarifying question.
Continuing on, we're still going?
We're at the
Yeah,
end of the.
no, I still have section
Oh,
14, and then Kate has section 15.
If you have a question about what's been.
I'm sorry. Well, I kind of jumped out of order. Okay.
They're not done putting all their sections in, but if you have a clarifying question.
Okay.
I just want to know what's all costs. that's
Jump
all.
in on section 14, which is on page 27. And this is just to really study electric bicycles, the clarification of them, definitions, what are the laws we have around. We have class 1, 2, and 3. But as we know, I won't say it's the wild, wild west out there, but there are a lot of different bicycles that don't necessarily meet these categories that are coming out there, much higher speeds. You know, when is a driver's license, or do you have to be 16 to drive these? And where can you? So I think that in the same way that electric chargers have sort of come before there's any regulatory guidelines around them, these electric bikes, we have some, but now they are expanding, and we need to understand, and you know, what laws do we have in place? What can municipalities do? What should the state do? What should our policies be? That's
Yeah, that's section 14 that got skipped over.
we have the last one, I think.
Yes, so I am covering section 15, which is proposes a study of vehicle miles traveled reduction target. So in our rural state, we drive over 7 billion miles every year. This is probably not a big surprise. But we are in the process of implementing a landmark land use law, which is the goal of which is to focus most development in our centers, historic villages, downtowns, and along corridors, which we are hoping to redevelop from outmoded single use into something more mixed use that would promote use of transit and allow people to live within access of jobs and opportunities. So as part of the implementation of Act 181, it seems very timely to have more ways to measure our overall state progress towards goals to increase multimodal opportunities and options, use of transit, and in conjunction with density. And that is what this provision of the bill proposes to do, to have a study that would result in a report to our Senate and House committees on that kind of a process for doing this. That's it.
They track this information now, if so, you know if it's tracked.
The agency does track the information, and I was able to find historic levels. I have not been able to find where the current information is. So the historic level that I found is from the 1920s through 2014.
Wow, okay.
So in between, I don't know where that is.
Interesting. Other question, Representative Casey?
I heard $1 million and I heard $70,000. How much is the rest of it? How much is all gonna cost?
I'll respond to that. You can see all of the appropriations that are proposed outlined in the bill. There's additionally 2 different revenue generation mechanisms without projections for how much they would generate, because more study would need to be done. And there's a number of provisions that don't require any appropriation. So it's not meant to be a whole package that's weighed in the total cost, but we would need to spend time taking testimony on each piece. And a number of them would require more information in order to understand exactly how much they might be able to generate, or more precisely how much they might cost if there's not a specific appropriation included. But there are a number of specific numbers in the bill.
So I gotta add them all up, you guys don't know what they are.
If you would like to do that, you certainly could. Yeah, the bill is public.
Excuse me.
Anyone else have questions about or clarifying question?
Excuse me?
What I said.
Representative Casey, if you have a clarifying question for any of them, that would be fine. But opinions and debate is not what we're doing here. They have a chance that if you would like to introduce a bill, we'll do the same for yours. Does anybody have any questions related to or clarifying questions on any of the sections of the bill? Well, with that, then, unless you have anything else you want to sum up on your bill piece?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving us the opportunity.
Fast drive by.
I guess I got confused when you got up there.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right. So I had 12 and 15 on something, so just 12 is the fact, or 12 and 13. And then 14 is the EV classifications, and 15 is the study of the equipment. Okay.
Yes.
All right, good.
Do you have a summary
Yeah,
that you might be able to share with us at some point?
yeah, I think we could do that.
Yeah, we have one, but I think it should be,
Or just a title of sections or something like that?
it should be,
We can do
updated
that.
a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have something close
Clarify.
to it
Yes,
already.
yeah.
Well,
That's-
There's a summary, but it doesn't have the section name numbers on it, so we can,
We'll get that to you.
we'll get it there.
If you photocopy my thing.
Yeah, I was doing a similar thing. I was trying to make a little notes next to each one, but so that we can have a summary of it. And we are adjourned.